When my parents passed away during my college years, my Uncle David and Aunt Rachel took me in without hesitation. Their home became mine, and their son Marcus, technically my cousin, was more like a brother. For years, that house was the only real family I knew. I helped however I could, contributed to bills, and believed we all cared for one another equally. Life moved forward, and though grief left its mark, I thought we had built something strong, something unbreakable. 7 years later, I was 28 and finally starting to find my footing. I'd spent months applying for jobs and enduring endless interviews, so when the email arrived offering me a position at a tech firm with a solid salary and benefits, I felt like my parents would have been proud. Uncle David insisted on throwing a family dinner to celebrate. Even Marcus came home early from work and, for a while that evening, laughter filled every corner of the dining room. Plates clattered, wine glasses clinked, and it felt like we were all exactly where we belonged. Then Kelly Marcus's wife announced she had news too. She'd been quiet all night, smiling in that polite, distant way she always did around me. Setting her fork down, she said calmly, "I'm pregnant." The room exploded in joy. Uncle David's eyes filled with tears. Aunt Rachel hugged her. Marcus leapt up, beaming from ear to ear. I was thrilled for them. They had been trying for a long time, and I immediately started picturing myself as the cool uncle someone their future child could look up to. But that warmth didn't last long. After the laughter died down, Kelly cleared her throat again. Her tone changed, measured, cold, deliberate. "There's something else I need to talk about," she said, her eyes fixed on me. "Now that I'm pregnant, Daniel, I think it's time you found your own place." At first I thought she was joking. The entire room fell silent. Aunt Rachel's smile faded and Marcus looked like he hadn't processed what she'd said. I laughed awkwardly. "What do you mean? There's plenty of space here. When the baby comes, I can help out." Her expression didn't soften. "That's exactly the problem," she replied. "We'll need privacy for our family. Our immediate family. You've got a good job now, you can afford to move out." The words hit me like a slap. Immediate family. After 7 years under the same roof, sharing holidays and late-night talks, she was drawing a line between them and me. I tried to reason with her, keeping my voice steady. "There's more than enough room here. We can reorganize things for the nursery. You don't have to worry." But she cut me off sharply. "You're not getting it. When I have the baby, I'll be recovering. I'll be breastfeeding. I'll be vulnerable. It's not right to have someone outside the family living here." Outside the family? I felt the air drain from my chest. Uncle David's hand tightened around his glass, but he stayed quiet. Aunt Rachel looked down at her plate, trembling. I tried again, softer this time. "Kelly, I'm not an outsider. I'm family." She tilted her head with this condescending sympathy that almost made my blood boil. "Daniel, I'm not trying to force you out, but you've been here for years. Don't you think it's time you learned some independence? Some self-respect?" I could barely speak. She was lecturing me about self-respect while trying to throw me out of my own home. That's when Uncle David slammed his hand on the table. "Enough, Kelly. You're out of line." His voice shook with anger. "Marcus, take your wife to your room." But Marcus, my brother in all but name, just frowned. "Dad, she's pregnant. You can't yell at her. And she's not wrong. Daniel's been here a long time. Maybe it's time he moved out." Something in me cracked. Marcus turned toward me, his voice quieter but crueler in its honesty. "Look, man, I didn't want to say this in front of everyone, but Kelly and I have been talking about this for months. We need our own life. And honestly, at your age, still living here, it's not a good look. People ask about it all the time. It's awkward." There it was. The truth behind Kelly's privacy. They weren't concerned about space. They were embarrassed by me. Uncle David's face went red with fury. "Then you can get out too," he shouted. Everyone froze, and in that heavy silence I realized something I had spent years being quiet, making myself small, trying to belong. That silence had taught them that they could walk over me, but not anymore. With my hands trembling under the table, I finally spoke. Kelly Marcus, you're mistaken about a few things. The room was still as I explained everything. How after my parents' funeral, Uncle David had given me back every check I ever wrote him, the ones I'd thought covered my living costs, 14 months of payments all untouched. How I'd used that money along with my parents' life insurance to buy this house outright. Every bill, every tax payment, every repair had come from me. When I finished, the color drained from Marcus's face. Kelly's jaw clenched, her smugness gone. Uncle David nodded silently, confirming it all. Yes, son, he said to Marcus. This house belongs to Daniel. It always has. The celebration dinner dissolved into shock and shame. Kelly stood up without a word, her expression twisting into hatred before she stormed upstairs. Marcus followed her, avoiding my eyes, and as the house fell into silence, I finally understood something my parents had tried to teach me. Kindness without boundaries only breeds entitlement. The next morning, the house was painfully quiet. I woke before dawn, unable to shake the heaviness in my chest. Every word from last night replayed in my head: Kelly's cold tone, Marcus's disappointment, Uncle David's pained silence. I brewed coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the steam rising from the mug, trying to convince myself things would calm down once everyone cooled off. At work, I could barely focus. I kept checking my phone, half expecting a message from Marcus, maybe even an apology, or at least some explanation. But there was nothing. By the time I drove home around 6:00 p.m., I was exhausted emotionally and physically. Pulling into the driveway, I noticed something strange. The lights were off, and the entire house was still. No TV sounds, no clinking dishes, no smell of dinner from Aunt Rachel's kitchen. Just silence. When I tried to unlock the front door, the key didn't fit. Confused, I jiggled it again, thinking it might be jammed. Then I realized the lock had been changed. My stomach twisted. I tried the back door. Same thing. Both locks were new. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the door of my own house, the home I had paid for, and couldn't believe what I was seeing. Then from upstairs, a window opened. Kelly appeared, her face twisted with triumph. "You're not taking this house from me," she shouted, her voice shrill and furious. "You can't just throw out a pregnant woman. This is my home now." And before I could respond, she slammed the window shut. I just stood there frozen. My hands shook as I looked up at the window. She had locked me out of my own home and was now pretending to be the victim. The anger rose slowly, hot, sharp, and cold all at once. I walked back to my car and sat inside, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Marcus. My cousin. My brother. Surely he didn't agree to this. Surely he didn't know. I debated for 20 long minutes. Part of me wanted to wait to give them a chance to fix this mess, but deep down I knew. Kelly had planned this. She wanted me gone, and she wasn't going to stop until she had her way. I took a deep breath and called the police. The dispatcher was calm and polite. "Do you have proof of ownership?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "The house deed is in my name." She told me officers would arrive in about 30 minutes. I sat in my car watching the darkened windows of my own home, wondering how it had come to this. When the police car finally pulled up, I felt a mix of dread and relief. Two officers stepped out, older men, the kind who looked like they'd seen everything twice. I explained what happened: the family dinner, Kelly's demand that I move out, the revelation that the house was mine, and how I came home to find myself locked out. I showed them the deed, both the digital copy and the physical one I kept in my car. They exchanged glances, one shaking his head slightly. "All right," one said, "let's talk to her." I stayed by my car as they approached the door and knocked. Their voices were calm, professional, but firm. When Kelly opened the door, I saw her face morph from surprise to anger to calculated innocence in a split second. She placed a hand on her stomach, adopting a trembling voice. "What's going on?" "My husband and I live here with his family. He's trying to kick us out." I only changed the locks for safety after he got aggressive when I told him I was pregnant. The officer held up a hand. Ma'am, we've seen the ownership documents. This house belongs to him, he said, gesturing toward me. Changing the locks without the owner's permission is illegal. Kelly's facade cracked. Her voice rose. This is ridiculous. I'm pregnant. You can't just throw a pregnant woman out on the street. The officer's tone hardened. Your husband doesn't own this property. This gentleman does. You're unlawfully excluding the rightful owner. You can either unlock the door and leave voluntarily, or be arrested for trespassing. For a moment, Kelly just stood there, breathing hard fury burning behind her eyes. Then she turned, stomping up the stairs. 10 minutes later, she came down, dragging a suitcase, Marcus following behind her. His shirt was wrinkled tie loose, eyes red. He looked wrecked. Daniel, he began, his voice breaking. But I raised a hand. Not now. Kelly brushed past us without another word, her glare sharp enough to cut glass. Marcus lingered, searching for something to say, but nothing came. He just turned and followed her to the car. The officers stayed until a locksmith replaced the locks again. Before leaving, one of them turned to me and said quietly, I've been doing this for over 20 years. Family cases are the hardest, but you did the right thing. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who hurt you the worst. When Uncle David and Aunt Rachel returned home that night, they looked shattered. Aunt Rachel cried as I explained what happened. Uncle David's shoulders slumped. I'm so sorry, he said. We should have told Marcus everything years ago. We should have backed you up more clearly at dinner. This never should have happened. I tried to assure him it wasn't their fault, but we all knew something had broken that couldn't be easily fixed. Later that night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the silence pressing against me. I thought about Kelly's twisted smirk, Marcus's hollow stare, and how fast love can turn into betrayal. But underneath the pain, something else stirred relief. For the first time in years, I had stood up for myself. The days that followed felt strange, quiet, but heavy. Uncle David and Aunt Rachel avoided talking about the incident, though I could see the guilt in their eyes. The house felt emptier now, but the silence carried a different weight. It wasn't just about Kelly or Marcus being gone, it was about the realization that family can sometimes fracture without warning, leaving behind cracks that never fully heal. 2 days later, I received a text from Marcus. Just 2 words. We need to talk. My chest tightened. Maybe this was his attempt to mend things, I thought. Maybe he wanted to apologize. But when he called that evening, his voice was cold, almost unrecognizable. You didn't have to call the cops, man, he began. You humiliated her. Kelly's pregnant, and you made her pack her things in front of strangers. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my tone steady. Marcus. She changed the locks on my house. She kicked me out of my own home. What was I supposed to do? He scoffed. You keep saying your house like we're strangers. Dad always called it the family house. You made it sound like we were freeloaders. That's not what I said, I replied quietly. I just told the truth. His voice hardened. You threw my wife out because of money, because of ownership. You've become obsessed with it. Do you know what Dad said when we were kids? That real family doesn't keep score. But that's all you do now, keep score. I swallowed hard. The only score I've ever kept was how many times I bit my tongue to keep the peace. How many times I helped without asking for anything back. And the moment I drew a line, you decided I wasn't family anymore. There was silence on the other end for a long moment before he said the words that cut deepest. Your parents would be ashamed of you. I closed my eyes, every muscle in my body tightening. For a few seconds I couldn't even breathe.